All right, hello everyone. Eric Marks here again with FindingMiddle-earth.com, and today I'm going to be doing a little quick tip video for you. So I get a lot of questions by email and social media pretty much all the time, and what I like to do is I like to look into those questions and see which questions are asked like 20 and 30 times, because those are the questions that I like to address into videos here on the channel, because obviously it's well asked about and a lot of people want to know the answer. So this is one of those topics, and I've probably gotten about 100 questions regarding this topic for the past couple of months. And it's actually got a pretty simple answer and solution for this. So the question is typically, Eric, how do I get that perfect landscape photo where I have a blurry, nice, soft water from a long exposure, and I have the surrounding scene, like the trees and the foliage and whatever else, perfectly sharp? Because every time I try to take a long exposure, if it's a windy day, the leaves on the trees or all the plants or anything else in the scene ends up blurry because of the long exposure, right? Because if you take a 30-second or a 1 minute or a 5-minute long exposure, the whole time while that shutter is open and letting the sensor expose, what it's doing is it's capturing everything, the movement. So if it's a windy day blowing the trees, all those trees are going to expose onto the sensor as a big motion blur. And obviously you want the water blurry, but you don't want all the trees blurry. So it's actually quite simple. You have to start thinking differently in the field. And by the way, if you want to learn a lot more in-depth stuff with blending and how to really get the most out of your post-processing files, check out my new tutorial. I just made an ultimate landscape masterclass on blending and post-processing, so check that out. But for this, it's quite simple. You just take two different exposures while you're in the field. You take one exposure with your ND filter on, the big long exposure, whatever it is, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, or 30 minutes, whatever it is, and you get that nice soft water that you want. And then you just take that ND filter off and take a regular normal exposure with a faster shutter speed that makes the surrounding scene and the trees and the plants and everything nice and sharp. And then you just blend those two photos together when you get back into post-production. So I happen to have a good photo example here of when I did exactly that in the field last autumn, and I will go ahead and hop into Photoshop and I'll show you that right now. So here we are in Photoshop CC, and this is a little scene that I took last autumn. There was a beautiful lake that had some autumn color starting to arise, and really the main part of the color was just in this little section here. So I thought that was a nice little reflection in the water, but I didn't like the water like that where you could actually see the ripples. But I liked that everything else was sharp. So let's zoom in here on the trees, so you can see the trees are just super sharp. All the leaves are nice and sharp. There's no motion blur anywhere. But if we reveal the bottom layer here, which is called long exposure, look at that. So there's the normal exposure, and there's the long exposure. It's got beautiful water, but look what happened to all the leaves and the trees. Everything becomes super blurry. Now, I actually kind of like, in this instance, how it turned out blurry. I think it looks kind of artsy and kind of cool, but obviously a lot of people don't like that look. So even up here, if you zoom in, the pine trees up here, they just all became this big motion blur. And a lot of people don't like that look. So what we do is actually quite simple. We just start with the normal exposure here. We simply create a mask, which is just poking a hole through to the bottom layer. You hit B on the keyboard to access your brush. Make sure you're painting with a black brush since we have a white mask. We'll take the opacity to 100% because we want 100% of that layer to come through of the long exposure water. We'll leave our flow pretty low there, and then we'll just simply start painting. And as we paint, that long exposure water comes right in. And it is as simple as that. And now we have a nicely blended scene. And there's a few places where we're spilling over. We can go fix those up and be a perfectionist about it. Obviously, we can make a smaller brush and go tidy those places up, but just for educational purposes, if you did want to do that, just hit X on your keyboard to switch to a white brush, and you can just tidy those areas up here by the shoreline where I spilled over. And there you go. Easy does it. Hit the X key again, tidy up over here, and there you go. Now we have our beautiful long exposure water with our beautifully sharp and nice colored trees, and now we're ready to start post-processing. These are just the raw files. They haven't had anything done to them yet, so now I can add the contrast and the color and the micro contrast and really start having fun and working with everything. And that was like a 2-minute fix. It just took a couple minutes to blend them all together, and I have a great starting file now to work with. So there you go. That's how you get long exposure blurry water mixed in with a great sharp surrounding scene. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. If you would like to stay up to date on all of my photography videos and free tutorials, please consider subscribing by clicking on my face. And if you would like to find out more about me and how to improve your photography, visit my website at findingmiddleearth.com.